You feel that the weight of life is crushing you, that worries, problems and fears accumulate like a mountain impossible to climb. Today God has a message for you. Let go of those burdens, stop fighting alone and trust in His perfect plan for your life. He doesn't want you to live trapped in stress, uncertainty or fear of tomorrow. This is your time to free your hands of what overwhelms you and open your heart to the peace and hope that only His love can offer. Stay with me, because in this message you will find the key to transform your pain into purpose and your exhaustion into strength. God wants to work in you, and His plan is bigger than you can imagine. Before you start this message that can change your life, I want to invite you to do something powerful. Go now, same to the comments and write, Lord, today I let go of my burdens and I fully trust in your plan for my life. Do it as an act of faith, as a declaration that today you decide to give God everything that weighs you down. Write this phrase and prepare to receive what He has in store for you. Now yes, let's begin. Verse 1, Matthew chapter 11 verse 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, then I'll let you relax. This strong lyric is a promise that might change our life as well as a call to dream. Imagine for a minute the weight you carry every day, the concerns that dominate your mind, the issues that seem to have no answer, and the extreme exhaustion that persists long after sleep. Jesus offers nothing the world ever does. He talks straight to that tormented heart. He could provide us actual rest, but what does that actually mean to rest in Him? When we approach Jesus, we are seeking more than just momentary solace, like someone who breathes in the middle of turmoil. Later on, Jesus presents us something much more. He wants to release our spirit from the weights we have been carrying on our own for so long. It is as if we are carrying a backpack full of stones that we have accumulated with the years, family problems, personal failures, fears and doubts, and He tells us, let me take them for you. But here is the detail. To experience that rest, we must be willing to trust Him and let go of those burdens. The rest that Jesus promises is not like the one we know in the world. It is not the rest we get when we get away from our problems watching television or browsing social networks. It is a rest that heals, that renews and transforms from the depths of our being. It is the type of rest that allows us to face the same circumstances but with an inexplicable peace, because we know that we are not alone. He walks with us and carries the weight that used to weigh us down. Sometimes we struggle with the idea of giving our burdens to Jesus because we think that we must solve everything on our own. We say to ourselves, I am strong, I can handle this. But being strong does not mean carrying everything. Being strong also implies recognizing when we need help. Jesus does not judge us for feeling tired or overwhelmed. On the contrary, He invites us with love, knowing that we are human and that our strength has a limit. He not only understands our pain, but is willing to intervene if we allow Him. The key to finding rest in Jesus is to approach Him with humility and sincerity. No, it is about presenting ourselves perfect or without flaws, but about coming as we are with our struggles, doubts, and tiredness. In that intimate relationship with Him, we learn to be in control and to trust that His plan for our life is better than anything we can imagine. And although sometimes we do not understand why we face certain difficulties, we can be sure that in His hands everything has a purpose. When Jesus says, come to me, He is extending an open invitation to everyone, no matter our situation or our past. No matter how much we have failed, how many times we have drifted away, oh how many mistakes we have made. He does not set conditions or require us to meet a list of requirements before receiving His rest. His love is unconditional and His desire to relieve us is genuine. We just need to take that step of faith, reach out to Him and accept His help. Think of the difference it would make in your life if you really trusted Jesus with your burdens. Imagine waking up every day without the anxiety, without the constant worry of what might happen, because you know that He is in control. This does not mean that problems will magically disappear, but it does mean that you will have a strength and a peace that you did not know before. It gives the key to freedom from them. Throw it to Him. But we do this how we give up our burdens and trust that He will sustain us. Imagine life as a journey in which we carry a backpack every day. We add new burdens, the stress of work, family worries, fears of the future. Without realizing it, that backpack becomes heavier and heavier until it reaches a point where walking seems impossible. God, like a loving Father, He sees us exhausted, struggling with that weight, and tells us, give it to me. You're not designed to carry all of this alone, but to hand over our burdens to Him is not simply a physical act, it's an act of faith. It means trusting that He is in control, even when circumstances seem to say otherwise. When the verse says He will sustain you, it doesn't refer to just temporary support. Sustaining means standing firm to strengthen us and guide us through any difficulty. Sometimes we think that depending on God is a sign of weakness, but in reality it is a sign of wisdom. To know when to let go of what destroys us is not weakness, it is strength. It is to recognize that although our strengths are limited, God's are infinite. God promises that He will never allow the righteous to be shaken. This does not mean that we will not face trials or that life will be perfect. It means that even if the strong winds come, our roots will be firm in it. Difficulties can shake, knows, but not destroy us. It is like a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind can bend it, but if its roots are deep, it remains standing. God is that root, that solid foundation that sustains us when the world seems to fall apart. Often the hardest part of this verse is not to understand it, but to apply it. We are not able to understand it. God asks us to trust Him, to give Him that which robs us of peace and leaves us without strength. He not only frees us from the weight but also guides us toward solutions we could not find on our own. We cling to control even if that control is draining us. We have a tranquility that beyond all knowledge when we load our responsibilities onto the Lord. It means that our viewpoint shifts. We stop staring at the storms and start turning to the God who governs them, not that issues vanish. Knowing that we are not alone in this fight helps us to face each day with optimism. Every action we do helps Him to maintain us and prevent the battle from consuming us. This promise is most beautiful in that it is accessible to everyone, regardless of our past failures, weight we have accrued, or distance we have felt from God. He is always ready to take our concerns into His hands and turn them into chances to show His power. If you feel overwhelmed, all we need to do is step of faith, believe in His love and faithfulness today. Remember these words: lay your load upon the Lord, talk to God, tell Him what weights you down, what troubles you, and put it in His hands if you are carrying more than you can handle. Trust He will maintain you, that He will give you the power to keep on, and that He will never let events to destroy you. God is ready to demonstrate to you that His love is more than His. He is not forgotten. Whatever burden you may carry, let go of the weight, trust in His promise, and let Him be the one to sustain you every step of your way. Verse 3, 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 7. Lay all anxiety on Him because He cares for you. These words are a balm for the soul, a reminder that we are not alone in our struggles. Anxiety is like a constant shadow, a burden that settles in our minds and hearts, robbing us of peace. This verse invites us to do something radically transformative, to place all our anxiety on God. But what does it really mean to do it, and how we can live this truth in our day-to-day? Imagine for a moment that you carry a heavy bag of worries, fears of the future, insecurities, financial problems, difficulties in relationships. That weight follows you everywhere, draining little by little. Now listen to this invitation: leave it all in my hands, I take care of you. This is exactly what God tells us through this verse. He asks us to let go of that sack. Let us stop carrying something that we are not designed to carry on our own. Placing our anxiety on God means trusting Him with what worries us, knowing that He has the power and love to handle it better than we do. Sometimes we think that our worries are too small or insignificant for God. We ask ourselves, why would this matter to Him? But this verse assures us that God cares for us, not in a general or distant way, but personally and closely. He knows every detail of our life, every thought, every fear, and cares deeply about us. There is nothing too small or too big for Him. If something takes away your peace, it is important to God and He wants you to give it to Him. Placing our anxiety on God is not simply telling Him what worries us and then continuing to carry the weight. It is an act of faith, is to completely let go of those worries and trust that He will take care of them even when we don't see immediate results. This can be challenging because as humans we tend to cling to control, thinking that if we are not worried we are not doing enough. But God does not call us to worry, He calls us to trust. Anxiety many times makes us believe that we are alone, that no one understands what we are doing. We are passing through, but this verse reminds us of a powerful truth. God not only understands but is actively caring for us. He is like a shepherd who takes care of his sheep, making sure they have everything they need. No matter how dark or difficult the path you are traveling, God is there guiding you, protecting you, and making sure you don't get lost. Anxiety has the ability to paralyze us, to rob us of the joy of the present because we are too focused on the end, yes, of the future. But when we place our anxiety on God, we experience a peace that the world cannot offer. This peace does not come from the absence of problems, but from the certainty that God is in control. He does not promise us a life free of difficulties, but He does assure us that we will never face those difficulties alone. This verse also calls us to be vulnerable before God. Many times we try to hide our emotions even from Him, thinking that we must present ourselves strong and self-sufficient. But say He does not want masks. He wants our heart as it is, with our doubts, fears, and fragility. When we are honest with Him, when we say to Him, Lord, I can't take it anymore, with this we are opening the door for Him to intervene with His power and love. Today I invite you to take a moment to reflect on what burdens you carry today. things are taking away your peace, talk to God, tell him everything, even the things that seem insignificant to you or the things you think you should figure it out for yourself. Then drop it into his hands. Do it with the confidence that he is taking care of you at this very moment. God did not create you to live trapped in a cycle of anxiety. He wants you to live in freedom, with the certainty that you are in his hands. So place all your anxiety on him, not some things, not the smallest ones, but all of them. He takes care of you not because you deserve it, but because his love for you is unconditional. Let that truth transform your day, your mind, and your heart. God is with you, taking care of you at every step, even in the moments when you don't feel it. Trust in his care because he will never abandon you. Verse 4, Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be distressed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. These words are like a beacon in the midst of the storm, a declaration that no matter how dark or difficult the road may be, we are not alone. This verse is a direct promise from God, one that has no conditions or restrictions. He is with us, ready to strengthen us, help us, and sustain us. But how can we take this promise and make it a reality in our daily lives? When God says fear not, he doesn't say it as superficial advice. He says it as a command backed by his presence. He knows that fear has the ability to paralyze us, to cloud our vision, and to make us believe that we are facing our battles alone. But God reminds us that he is with us. Imagine having someone infinitely powerful and full of love by your side in every moment, in every struggle, in every step. That's the promise God makes to us. His presence is not distant, it's close, constant, and full of purpose. The verse continues with, don't be distressed because I am your God. Heartache is the result of carrying uncertainties and problems that we feel we can't solve. But here's the key. No, we need to figure it all out on our own. God is not only present but also our God, our guide, our protector. He is not a passive spectator of our lives. He is actively involved, making sure that even though we face trials, we will never be out of his care. Knowing that he is our God should fill our hearts with peace. Even in the most challenging moments, I will strengthen you and help you. These words are a reminder of that our human forces have a limit, but God's forces are infinite. Often we try to face our struggles with our own capacities, and when we fail, discouragement invades us. But God offers us his strength, one that does not run out, one that allows us to get up even when we feel that we can't take it anymore. And not only does he strengthen us, he also helps us. He doesn't just observe from afar. He enters our battles, fight by our side, and ensure victory. Then there is this powerful promise, I will hold you with my victorious right hand. God not only gives us strength and help, but also sustains us. Imagine falling exhausted by the struggles of life and feeling like a firm and loving hand lifts you up. That is his victorious right hand. It is not a hand, it is the hand of the God who has overcome everything, who has absolute power. And that he will never, ever let you fall to the point of not being able to get up. But living this promise requires faith. It requires believing that God is with us, even when we don't feel it. It requires trusting that he will sustain us, even when our circumstances seem to indicate otherwise. It is not easy, because our human nature tends to look for tangible evidence, immediate results. But God calls us to walk by faith, not by sight, knowing that his word it is true and that his promise never fails. If today you feel overwhelmed, if fear or anguish have taken control of your mind, remember these words. Do not be afraid, because I am with you. God has not forgotten you. He has not left you. He is with you at this very moment, ready to strengthen you, help you, and sustain you. Speak to him. Give him your fears. Trust in his promise. His victorious right hand is your refuge. His presence is your security. Life can be difficult, but you don't need to face it. Only God with his infinite love and his unparalleled power is with you every step of the way. So lift your gaze, let go of fear, and allow his strength to lift you up. Today is the day to welcome this reality, to walk knowing that the God who owns the cosmos also owns you. He will never let you fail or fall. This chapter invites us to something radically different. To fully trust God, even if we do not know what is going on around us. To trust the Lord with all our heart means to open ourselves totally to his will. It is to let go of our doubts, our fears, and that impulse to want to be in control of everything is not about trust, but of total surrender. But here's the challenge. Our prudence, our human logic often tells us the opposite. Tells us that if we can't see the solution, then there's no way out. He makes us believe that if we're not in control, things will fall apart. Yet God reminds us that our perspective is limited, while his is infinite. He sees the big picture. He knows what we need and when we need it, even before we ask for it. When the verse says don't lean on your own prudence, it's not devaluing our ability to think or reason. What it teaches us is that we shouldn't rely exclusively on our own strength or understanding. Our prudence is like a lantern on a dark night. It illuminates, but only to a certain extent. God is instead the light of the sun that reveals all the way, even though that is beyond our sight. Sometimes we believe that our decisions are the best because they are based on what we can see and calculate, but how many times have we made decisions that seemed right and ended up being a mistake? Trusting God is recognizing that His wisdom surpasses ours and that His plan for our life is perfect. Recognize Him in all your ways. This is more than a simple prayer or to recognize Him in all our ways means to recognize Him in every area of our life, our relationships, our work, our daily decisions, is to seek His guidance constantly, to ask Him, Lord, what you want Him to do, is to live with the certainty that every step we take, He is there willing to direct us, and we are willing to hear. This recognition not only brings us closer to God, but also fills us with peace, because we know that He is not the same. We're not sailing alone in the waters of life, and here there is the most beautiful promise. He will smooth your paths. This does not mean that life will be free of challenges, but it does mean that God will remove the obstacles that we do not need to face and give us the strength to overcome those that we do have to cross. It is as if He is preparing the way before us, removing the biggest stones and making the ground firmer. When we trust in Him, our decisions align with His will, and that leads us to a much greater purpose than we could imagine. Many times the greatest challenge to trusting God is the fear of the unknown. We think, what will happen if I stop having control? But trusting in the Lord is not falling into the void. It is resting in the certainty that He sustains us. It is seeing that His thoughts are higher than ours, and that His love for us is not to be able to see that His thoughts are higher than ours, and that His love for us is to see that His thoughts are higher than ours. Today God invites you to let go of that weight of having to solve everything on your own. He invites you to trust Him with all your heart, to stop depending just on your understanding, and to recognize Him in every aspect of your life. We are infinite even if we do not understand why something is happening. Let Him into every decision and every path you take, because when you do, He promises to pave the paths, guide you down paths of peace and purpose, and take you to where you really need to be. So today, take a moment to reflect on what areas of your life you need to surrender to God, what decisions you are facing where you could seek His guidance instead of relying on your strength alone. Do it, trust His promise, and see how His love transforms your life in a way you never imagined. He is with you, ready to direct your steps. You just need to trust. Verse 6, Philippians chapter 4 verses 6 and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but on all occasions with prayer and supplication, present your requests to God and give Him, and the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and your thoughts in Christ Jesus. These words are a direct call to let go of anxiety, a reminder that we don't need to carry our worries alone. We live in a world that constantly pushes us into restlessness, where daily pressures seem endless, but this passage offers us a different path, a way out of the storm to a peace that only God can give. The first sentence, don't worry about anything, seems challenging. How not to worry when facing financial problems, illness, conflict? But this is not just a command, it is an invitation to stop carrying the weight that we were never supposed to carry alone. God asks us to surrender our troubles to Him, not to disregard them. Restlessness, that continuous concern that robs us of calm, has no place when we believe in a God larger than any condition. The key lies in what follows in the future. With prayer and petition, convey your needs to God on every occasion. God invites us to talk with Him, to bring Him anything that worries us without regard. We have no restrictions on what we may show Him, from the toughest obstacles to the most little everyday problems. God is ready to hear us, but He is also here to ask humbly, with a heart that acknowledges our whole reliance on Him, not merely to talk. Crucially, as we present our petitions to Him, we must also thank Him for why, because gratitude transforms our perspective. Remember that even though we face difficulties, God has been faithful and will continue to be faithful. When we do this, something wonderful, God's peace happens. A peace that surpasses all understanding begins to fill our hearts. This peace is not like the one offered by the world, which depends on circumstances. It is a peace that exists even in the midst of the storm, a tranquility that makes no sense from a human perspective. It's like being in the eye of a hurricane surrounded by chaos, but completely calm because we know that we are in God's hands. This peace is not something we can create by ourselves. It is a divine gift, a promise that comes when we fully trust in it. That peace not only calms our heart, it also protects our mind. Anxiety and worries attack our thoughts, filling us with doubt and fear, but God's peace acts as a shield, guarding our minds from those attacks on Christ Jesus. our thoughts are renewed, focused on God's hope and promises rather than on the uncertainties of the world. It is a complete change of perspective, a transformation that allows us to live confidently even when we face challenges. The most incredible thing about this passage is that it is not a promise limited to certain people or situations. It is for all who are willing to trust God, to give up their burdens to Him, and to seek Him in prayer no matter how much you are facing or how great your struggle is. This peace is available to you, but it requires action. It requires you to make the decision to go to God with all that troubles you, to be honest with Him, to thank Him for His faithfulness and trust that He is at work even when we don't see Him today. If you feel overwhelmed, if anxiety has taken control of your mind and heart, I invite you to put these words into practice. Talk to God, present your requests, and don't forget to thank Him. Be thankful for what He has already done, for what He is doing, and for what He will do in the future. Do it with the certainty of that His peace will fill you, that your heart will be guarded, and that your thoughts will be protected in Christ Jesus. Remember that God's peace is not a passing emotion. It is a reality that you can live every day. You don't have to carry your worries alone. You don't have to fight with your fears without help. God is with you, ready to receive your burdens, to give you His peace, and to take care of you. Realizing we don't have all the answers starts us on our road to God. In the world we live in, we are entitled to be the most important, and independence and control are appreciated. We trust Him, we stop relying on our limited strengths, and we begin to depend on His infinite power. The promise that follows this invitation is incredible. He will act. God does not ask us to entrust our way to Him and trust Him just to watch us from afar. He promises to act, and when God acts, He does so perfectly, aligning the pieces of our life in ways that we could never imagine. At times, His acting is not immediate or doesn't happen the way we expect, but your timing is perfect, and your way of working always brings a greater purpose, one that we often only understand when we look back. Imagine for a moment that you are in a lost labyrinth trying to find your way out. From your perspective, everything seems confusing. The paths look the same and you don't know where to go, but God has a complete view from the labyrinth. He sees every turn, every obstacle, and He knows exactly how to guide you to the exit. And trusting your way to Him is like taking His hand and allowing Him to lead you, trusting that no matter how confusing or uncertain everything seems, He knows where it is leading you. But here's something important. Commend our path, and trusting in God doesn't mean we stop acting. It doesn't mean we sit back and wait for us to be able to do it. Everything is magically resolved. God calls us to walk in faith, to make decisions guided by His word, and to act with the certainty that He is directing every step. It is a collaborative relationship where we do our part but leave the final result in His hands. Sometimes the greatest obstacle to entrusting our path to the Lord is fear. Fear that His plan is not what we want, fear of losing control, fear of the unknown. But here's the key: His plan is always better, even when we don't understand it. Even when it seems difficult, God is working for our good. His love for us is so deep that He will never allow us to walk a path that isn't the best for our life. Even though sometimes that path involves challenges and growth, today God invites you to let go of that burden you've been carrying. He invites you to give Him your ways, to trust His love, and to let Him act. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. You just need trust, because He is already working even when you don't see Him. And entrusting your way to the Lord is the most liberating act you can do, because it means that you are no longer alone in this journey. So today, pause. Reflect on the areas of your life where you need to let go of control and surrender them to God. Talk to Him. Tell Him what worries you, what you dream, what hurts you, and then trust that He will act no matter how complicated your path may seem. God already has the complete map. He knows exactly where He is taking you and how to get you there. Let go of the weight, trust His promise, and allow Him to lead you to the purpose He has for your life. Verse 8, Exodus chapter 14, verse 14. The Lord will fight for you. Just be still. This is a powerful message, one that invites us to stop, to drop our weapons, and trust that God is at work, even when we don't see Him. Imagine the context in which these words were spoken. The people of Israel trapped between the Red Sea and the Egyptian army, with no apparent escape. Everything indicated that they were doomed, but it was in that moment of despair that God spoke through Moses, declaring this transforming truth. The Lord will fight for you. This verse reminds us of something crucial. Not all of life's battles are designed for us to fight with our strength. There are times when our struggle will not make any difference because the problem is beyond our capabilities, and it is in those moments that God tells us, "Leave it to me, I will take care of it." But for this promise to be activated in our life, we need something that can be difficult to practice: to stay still. Not still in the sense of total inactivity, but in the sense of surrender, of trusting completely that God is in control. Standing still is not easy. We are beings accustomed to acting, to trying to solve everything on our own. When we face problems, our natural instinct is to do something, whatever it takes to try to change the situation, but this verse invites us to stop, not to act from desperation, but from despair. To experience this promise, however, we must have trust, confidence that even if we do not observe how God is working, faith that even if we do not see God, He is working for us. Should the circumstances appear bleak, He is in charge. This trust is founded on who God is rather than on our ability to act. We are certain that His strength, love, and character will be enough to meet whatever comes across our road. The most lovely aspect of this chapter is that all rests on God. Our capacity, power, or intelligence has nothing bearing on it. God releases us from here. Manifest as you rest in His promise. He is opening highways, climbing mountains, and guaranteeing your triumph. Just trust and let Him be the one to fight for you. Verse 9, Psalms chapter 46, verse 10, Be still, recognize that I am God, exalted among the nations, I will be exalted on earth. This verse invites us to stop, to be silent the noise of our worries and fears, and to recognize God's sovereignty over everything, is a call to a deep stillness, not only physical but of the soul, so that we can experience His power and His presence in our lives in a world that constantly pushes us to movement, to action, and to the immediate solution of problems. Be still. It may sound contradictory, but this stillness does not. It is inactivity or resignation. It is an act of faith. It is stopping in the midst of our struggles, worries, and chaos to remember that God is in control. No matter how great the challenges we face, no matter how insurmountable the mountains in front of us may seem, God calls us to stop, to trust in His power, and to recognize that He is God when He says, "Recognize that I am God." It is not just about knowing who He is, surrendering to His authority and fully trusting His character. God is not a distant spectator. He is the CRE of all the sustainers of our lives and the one who has the absolute power to transform any situation. Recognizing Him means remembering that He has the last word, that His plan is perfect, and that His love for us is infinite. This stillness also invites us to let go of our worries and trust that God is at work, even when we can't see Him in our battles. Many times we feel that we must be constantly doing something as if everything depends on us, but this verse reminds us that there are times when God calls us to stop and let Him be the one to act. In that pause, in that surrender, we find His peace, a peace that is not based on in the absence of problems, but in the certainty that God is at work in our lives. Exalted, I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted on earth. This statement gives us an eternal perspective, reminds us that in the end God will be glorified. No matter how turbulent the circumstances we face, His glory will prevail. He is the God who rules over the nations, who sustains the universe, and who makes sure that His purpose is fulfilled. When we understand this, our fears start to vanish. We realize that our conflicts are part of a far greater plan and that we are not alone in our trials. The silence that God wants of us also lets us hear His voice. Many times we leave no space for God to speak as we are so preoccupied fixing issues, looking for solutions, and keeping our day full with activity. Moments of pause where His voice becomes clearer. He guides us, strengthens us, and reminds us that we are not alone. This connection with God not only gives us peace, but also gives us clarity to face whatever comes today. God invites you to stop, to pause the noise of your mind, to let go of the control you have been trying to exert, and to trust that He is in control. You don't have that having all the answers. You don't have to figure it all out. You just need to stand still, surrender to His authority, and allow His peace to flood your heart. He is with you, working on your behalf even when you don't feel it. In the midst of chaos, He is your refuge, your strength, and your ever-present help. Remember that standing still is not a sign of weakness but of strength. It is an act of faith in a God who He never fails, that He always keeps His promises, and that He is worthy of all trust. So today, let go of your worries, stop fighting with your own strength, and recognize that He is God. He is exalted in the nations, exalted in all the earth. In His power, He is also working in your life. Staying still in His presence will allow you to experience His peace, His guidance, and His love like never before. God not only He asks you to trust, but He also promises that as you rest in Him, His purpose will be fulfilled, He will be glorified, and you will witness His power. So stop today, speak with God, share your concerns with Him. Allow Him be God in your life and see how His serenity changes your heart and His purpose leads your way. Verse 10, Isaiah chapter 26. You will maintain in complete tranquility the one whose thinking perseveres in you because he trusts in you. Many of us yearn for this chapter in the depths of our existence. who does not want to live in perfect peace in a world full of distractions, chaos, and worries. This peace seems sometimes unattainable, but God shows us how we can experience it. It is not a hidden secret or a privilege reserved only for a few. It is a gift available to those who choose to persevere in their thinking toward Him and place their trust in Him. When He speaks of perfect peace, does not refer to a partial, momentary, or circumstance-dependent peace. It is a peace that goes beyond what we understand to fill every corner of our heart and mind, even in the midst of storms. But there is a key to living in this peace, persevering in our thinking toward God. This does not mean simply thinking about Him from time to time, but keeping our mind fixed on His character, on His promises, on His faithfulness. It is a constant exercise of focus, of rejecting distractions and doubts, and of remembering that He is the one who sustains our whole mind. It is a battlefield. Constant thoughts of fear, anxiety, and worry try to occupy our mental space each day, but God calls us to persevere, to fight to keep our focus on Him. This requires intention, a conscious effort to replace those negative thoughts with the truth of who God is. How do we do this? By meditating on His Word, by praying, by reminding ourselves that He is in control. Persevere. It is not easy, but it is the path that leads to the peace we all desire. The second part of the verse reveals the reason for this peace: because trust is in you. Trust is the basis of this perfect peace. It is not about trusting our circumstances, our abilities, or the people around us. It is about trusting God completely. That trust does not come out of nothing. It is the result of knowing Him, of experiencing His faithfulness, a trust and again to know that He is good and that His plan for us is always better. Even when we don't understand it, when we trust God, we stop depending on our own strength. We let go of control, the worries and fears that bind us. We say, "Sir, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, but I trust that you do. I don't have all the answers, but I trust that you have them." That trust frees our hearts and minds from the burden of trying to figure it all out on our own, allows us to rest because we know we are in the hands of the God who created the universe. The peace God promises does not eliminate problems, but transforms how we deal with them. Instead of being consumed by stress, we become aware of His presence. Instead of being overwhelmed by fear, we are strengthened by His love. When we are born, we stick to our ideas about Him and believe in His purpose. We discover that peace the world cannot provide, a peace based on who is with us at every turn rather than on what goes around us. This chapter also reminds us of God's constancy. He maintains in perfect peace those who believe in Him, not because we deserve it, but rather because He is true to His word. His desire is for us to experience the freedom that comes from believing in His love and power, not for us to be caught in a cycle of fear or concern. His serenity is a genuine promise accessible to us now. He never fails us and He does not forsake or forget us. If you are looking for that ideal serenity, start now to keep your mind toward God. Spend some time to concentrate on His word and talk with God. Let go of control. He asks to remind you of who He is and how much He loves you. Leave your worries in His hands and trust that He has the best plan for you. This is not only a nice idea or an impossible desire, but a promise that God is ready to fulfill in your life. God wants you to live in perfect peace, not in fragments of tranquility, but in a whole, constant, and transforming peace. That peace is possible when you choose to persevere in your thoughts toward Him and trust in His love. So today, decide to trust. Decide to persevere and let the peace of God guard your heart and mind in the midst of any circumstance. He is with you and His peace is within your reach. Verse 11, Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, the Lord affirms welfare plans and not of calamity, in order to give them a future and a hope." This verse is a reminder that our lives are not adrift, that we are not victims of chance or circumstance, but that there is a sovereign God who has a perfect purpose for each of us. It is a promise that fills us with hope, especially in times when everything seems dark or uncertain. God says, "I know the plans I have for you." Here, He doesn't talk about assumptions or possibilities. He knows His knowledge. He's not limited or subject to change. He has a clear, specific, and lovingly designed plan for each of us, and most beautiful of all, these plans are not for calamity. They're not meant to destroy us or do us no harm. They're plans for well-being, peace, spiritual prosperity. Often in our daily struggles, we struggle to see these plans. We face problems, disappointments, failures, and wonder where God is in all of this. But this verse invites us to trust that even in the midst of our difficulties, He is at work. His plans are not always immediately revealed or unfolded as we expect. They are perfect every step. Even those that seem painful or meaningless are part of a greater purpose that leads to our well-being and the glory of God. Plans of well-being and not calamity. This does not mean that our life will be free from trials. but it does mean that those trials do not have the last word. God is not absent in our pain. On the contrary, He uses it to strengthen us, to mold us, to draw us closer more to His heart. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to trust that His plans are better than ours, even when we don't understand them. The verse goes on to say, in order to give them a future and a hope. Here is the key. God not only has a plan for our present but also for our future. He does not leave us stuck in our current situation, but promises us a full tomorrow. That hope is not an illusion. It is not an empty desire. It is a certainty based on His faithful character and His inexhaustible love. When we trust in His plans, we can face the future with confidence, knowing that we are in the hands of the Creator of the universe. But this promise requires something of us. Faith that God knows what He is doing, faith that His timing is perfect, faith that even the most difficult roads lead us to His purpose. Many times we want to see the whole picture before we trust, but God calls us to walk by faith, not by sight. It's as if we are crossing a bridge shrouded in fog, unable to see the other side, but trusting that He will lead us there. This verse also challenges us to give up. We often struggle with our own plans, holding on to what we believe to be the most important. It is better for us, but God invites us to let go of that control, to surrender our dreams, our fears, our expectations, and to trust that His plans are infinitely better. It is not about giving up our aspirations, but about aligning our hearts with His will, knowing that His purpose for our life exceeds anything we can imagine. If you feel lost today, if you are facing a time of uncertainty, or if you wonder if there is a purpose in what you are living, remember these words. I know the plans I have for you. God has not forgotten about you. He has not stopped working in your life. His for you is still going, and it is a plan full of hope, full of purpose, full of love. Trust that God is in control even when everything seems out of place. Talk to Him, give up your worries and your plans, and let His peace fill your heart. His promise is not just for the future, it's for today, for this moment. He's at work even when you don't see Him, even when you don't feel Him. His plans are good and His love for you never changes. Keep faith. Cause your future, it's safe in His hands. He's the God of hope, and His purpose for your life is perfect. Verse 12, Deuteronomy chapter 31 verse 8, the Lord Himself will go before you and be with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be discouraged. These words are a declaration of love and divine commitment, a promise that when we embrace it transforms completely how we face life, no matter how uncertain or difficult the path. This verse assures us that we do not walk alone, that God is not only with us. Imagine this scene. You're facing an unknown path full of obstacles that you can't foresee. Anxiety begins to wash over you, but just at that moment someone tells you, I'm going first. You don't have to worry about what's coming because I'll face it before you. That's exactly what God promises us here. He doesn't expect us to face our struggles alone or that we carry the weight of the unknown. He goes before us, paving the way, removing obstacles we don't need to face and strengthening our hands for the challenges we do need to go through. The promise that the Lord Himself will be with you is not an abstract idea. It is a reality we can experience in every moment. He is not a distant spectator of our lives, but a constant companion present at every step. When we feel our strength running out, His presence sustains us. When we face difficult decisions, His wisdom guides us. When fear paralyzes us, His love gives us courage. This divine closeness does not depend on our actions or merits. It is an unconditional gift of His grace, and the most impactful thing is what follows. He will never leave you or abandon you. In a world where relationships can be fragile, where people sometimes He walks away or fails, this promise is an anchor for our soul. God doesn't change. He doesn't get tired. He doesn't give up on us no matter how many times we stumble or how far we feel like we've fallen. He remains faithful. His commitment to us is eternal, and His love never runs out. Even in the moments when we don't feel it, He is still there, sustaining us, guiding us, loving us. Don't be afraid or discouraged. These words are not just advice, they are a command backed by God's. Fear and discouragement are two of the most powerful weapons we face in life. They whisper to us that we are not enough, that we cannot face what is coming, that we are alone. But God, with His firm voice full of love, tells us otherwise. He tells us otherwise. Recall that His love is stronger than any discouragement. His might is more than any fear, and His goal for us is more than any barrier. Walking with the knowledge that God is with us alters our viewpoint. Obstacles that previously seemed insurmountable become chances to observe His hand and work. Dark paths we formerly avoided become opportunity to experience His brightness, no matter what we do. Knowing that the God who built the cosmos is at our side gives us confidence going ahead. This guarantee indicates that we will never confront challenges alone, not that we will never encounter them. God offers His presence in each of them. He does not promise a life free from difficulties. That presence turns our suffering into direction, our uncertainty into trust, and our anxiety into bravery. It provides us the will to stay on even under difficulty. God goes before you. Not only did I open paths, walking with you at every step, do not fear what is coming, because the same God who has been faithful in the past will be faithful in the future. Do not be discouraged, because His strength is available to you today. His love is constant, His presence is real, and His promise is sure. Thus, go forth with assurance, knowing that the God guiding you will never abandon you nor fail you. You are never alone. The Lord hears the righteous plead in verse 13, Psalms chapter 34. He relieves them from all their suffering in verses 17 and 18. The Lord rescues those crushed in spirit and is close to the brokenhearted. These words serve as a kind of soul balms, a promise reminding us that God is not just listening for our prayers. He is also deeply close to us in our darkest and most painful moments. This passage speaks to us of a God who is not distant or indifferent, but deeply committed to our well-being and ready to act on our behalf when He says, "The righteous cry and the Lord hears them." It is a direct declaration that our prayers do not fall into the void. Sometimes in the midst of our anguish we feel that our words are lost, that God is silent, that maybe He doesn't hear us, but this verse assures us that every cry, every whisper, every tear we shed comes directly to His heart. He doesn't just listen, He responds, and when He does, it's not superficial or temporary. His response has the power to set us free, to break the chains of anguish, and to bring us peace in the midst of the storm. God is not an observer aloof who simply sees our suffering. He is a loving Father who steps in when you cry out to Him. No matter how big or small your need is, He is attentive. This does not mean that He will always respond in the way we expect, but it does mean that His response will always be the best, because His perspective is eternal and His love for us is infinite. He does not promise to avoid all difficulties, but He does promise to deliver us from them, keep through them, and use each one for our good. The next verse is even more moving. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. What an incredible promise when our heart is broken. When we feel like life has hit us too hard, that's when God is closest. He is not a God who leaves us alone in our pain, but one who comes into our wounds, who holds us in the midst. He not only observes our suffering, He shares His closeness. He is a reminder that we are never alone, even in the darkest of times. And not only is He near, but He also saves those of broken spirit. This does not only mean eternal salvation. It means rescue here and now in our daily struggles. When our strength is exhausted, when we feel that we cannot, but God intervenes. He lifts us up, restores us, and gives us new hope. His salvation is not only for our soul, but also for our heart, our mind, and our whole life. This passage invites us to reflect on God's character. He is not indifferent to our suffering. He is not a distant judge who expects us to be perfect before He approaches us. He is a God who moves toward us in the future. Our weakness is that He hears our cry, that responds to our anxieties, and that stays by our side when everything seems to fall apart. His love does not depend on our circumstances or our ability to manage life. His love is constant, unbreakable, and transformative. If you feel broken today, if you carry anguish that seems unbearable, remember these words: God is with you. He hears your cry even when the words do not come out. He is near. Tell Him what hurts you, what weighs you, what scares you. Trust that His love is bigger than any problem you face, and that His power can transform even the most difficult situations. God has not forgotten you. He is present, ready to deliver you from your heartaches, to heal your heart broken, and to give you new hope. No matter how great the weight you carry, no matter how dark the night you face, His light is stronger. He is closer than you imagine, and His desire is to bring you peace, strength, and restoration. So cry out to Him, trust in His promise, and allow His love to transform your life. He is faithful, and His nearness never fails. Verse 14, Isaiah chapter 43 verse 2, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you cross the rivers, their waters will not cover you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned or embraced by the flames. This verse is one of God's most powerful and comforting promises, a reminder that no matter how difficult the road is, He will always be by our side. He does not promise that we will not face trials, but He does promise that those trials they will not destroy us, because their presence sustains us and their power protects us. Think for a moment about the deep waters you have faced in your life, those moments when you felt like you were drowning, that the waves of hardship were too big for you. Maybe they were financial problems, family problems, a loss, or even an internal struggle that no one else knew. God does not ignore those moments. On the contrary, He says, I will be with you. He doesn't promise you that the waters will disappear immediately, but He assures you that you won't be alone. His presence is a guarantee that even though the circumstances are overwhelming, His hand will always be outstretched to hold you when you cross the rivers. Their waters won't cover you. Have you ever felt as if you were crossing a mighty river, fighting against the current and feeling that at any moment you could be swept away in those moments? It's easy to lose hope, but here God reminds us that He is our protector. His promise is not that the waters of the river will disappear, but that He will not cover you. Aaron, this means that you will not sink, that even if you feel that your strength is at the limit, His power will lift you up. He is like that invisible bridge that holds you even when you can't see Him. When you walk through the fire, you will not burn or hug the flames. Fire represents those intense trials that seem to consume us, those moments when everything around us seems to be collapsing. It can be a crisis, a betrayal, a failure, or any situation that makes you feel like you are in the middle of a fire. But God promises that even if you are in the fire, you will not be burned. He does not say that you will avoid the fire, but that He will not allow it to destroy you. He is like a shield protective, making sure the flames don't touch the depths of your being. This verse invites us to reflect on the nature of the trials in our lives. They are not the end of the road, but part of the process through them. God molds us, strengthens us, and brings us closer to Him, and He does so with the promise that we will never be alone. His presence is not something distant or symbolic, it is real, tangible and transformative in every wave, in every river, and in every fire. He is there working on your behalf. Even when you don't understand it, it is important to remember that God's presence does not mean the absence of problems, but it does mean the certainty that you have everything you need to face them. He will not leave you alone to fight with your own strength. He will give you His peace in the midst of chaos, His strength in the midst of weariness, and His direction when you don't know where to go. Every step you take, He is with you, guiding you, holding you, and making sure you get to the other side stronger and more confident in His love. If today you feel like you are going through deep water or walking in the middle of fire, do not be discouraged. These trials are not permanent and do not have the power to destroy you. God has already promised that He will be with you, that will protect you and carry you through them. Talk to Him, give Him your fears, and trust that His word is faithful. No matter what you face, His love is stronger, His power is greater, and His presence is enough. God is calling you to remember that even though trials are inevitable, His victory is sure. He not only helps you through them, but He also uses them to strengthen you, to show you that His power is at work in you. So move forward with confidence. Don't fear the waters, don't fear the fire, because the God who is with you is the same one who has promised that He will never leave you or forsake you. He is your refuge, your strength, and your guide every step of the way. Before I want to invite you to take a step of faith, go to the comments and write, "Lord, today I let go of my burdens and I fully trust your plan for my life." Do it as a statement, as a commitment to let go of everything that weighs you down and trust that God is in control. Remember, He is with you, working on your behalf. Write the phrase and allow this to be the beginning of a new full stage of peace and hope in His plan.